He arrived at the White House as the greatest promise of American democracy in generations. Young, eloquent, the first black president in the history of the United States. His victory speech in 2008 made the world cry with hope. Millions of people in the streets of Chicago, tears on their faces, believing something had changed forever. The Nobel Peace Prize was handed to him in 2009, before he had even completed 1 year in office. The world had found its hero. But behind the impeccable smile, the perfect speeches, and the carefully constructed image of American redemption, there is a story that very few have the courage to tell. A story of bombs falling on countries the United States never formally declared war on. Of bankers who destroyed the livelihoods of millions of families and never spent a single day in prison. Of journalists and whistleblowers pursued with a brutality that would embarrass any dictatorship. And of a president who promised to close Guantanamo on day one and left office 8 years later with it still open. Today, the hidden face of Barack Obama, the president of change who protected the powerful and bombed the invisible. The man the world needed to believe. Obama was born in 1961 in Hawaii. He graduated from Harvard Law School, became a senator for Illinois, and in 2008 defeated the most powerful political machine in the Democratic Party to become the 44th president of the United States. After 8 years of George W. Bush, wars, torture at Abu Ghraib, and illegal surveillance, Obama was everything the world wanted to believe America could be. In January 2009, in his first days in office, he signed executive orders mandating the closure of Guantanamo within 1 year. The end of enhanced interrogation techniques, bureaucratic euphemism for torture, and greater government transparency. The world applauded. In October of that same year, the Nobel Committee announced the Peace Prize. The president himself admitted he was surprised. He had just ordered the deployment of 30,000 additional troops to Afghanistan, but the world was still willing to believe. And it was precisely that willingness that opened the door to the other story, the one nobody told you. What he actually did. Before revealing what was hidden, it is necessary to acknowledge what was real. Obama inherited the worst economic crisis since 1929 and delivered 75 consecutive months of job growth. Unemployment fell from 10% to 4.7%. Obamacare covered more than 20 million uninsured Americans. He signed the Paris Climate Agreement, normalized relations with Cuba, legalized marriage equality, eliminated Osama bin Laden. All of that was real. All of it matters. And that is exactly why what comes next is so disturbing. Because we are not talking about a man without virtue. We are talking about a man who did genuinely good things and at the same time made decisions that no beautiful speech can erase. Decisions that cost lives, that destroyed families, that the entire world still refuses to discuss. The kill list. Every Tuesday morning, a select group of American government officials gathered at the White House for a meeting that became known as Terror Tuesday. The purpose was to review a list of names, terrorism suspects, members or alleged collaborators of groups like Al-Qaeda and the Taliban scattered across Pakistan, Yemen, and Somalia. But also on the list were people who had never been tried, never formally charged with any crime, merely identified by intelligence agents as potential threats. No tribunal, no defense, no possibility of challenging the accusations. The meeting decided which of them would be killed that week by drones controlled from thousands of miles away. The New York Times revealed the existence of this list in 2012 based on accounts from 36 officials. Obama did not merely know each name, he personally approved the targets, meeting with advisors to select who would live and who would die. Over his 8 years, the United States conducted more than 500 drone strikes across the Middle East and Africa. According to the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, those strikes killed between 400 and 800 civilians. In a single year, Obama conducted more strikes than Bush carried out during his entire presidency. The government insisted drones were exceptionally surgical and precise. But the New York Times revealed the administration automatically classified all military-age males in a strike zone as combatants, unless proven civilian after the fact. The government claimed to have killed between 64 and 116 civilians. The Bureau documented between 384 and 807. The difference between those two numbers has a name: institutionalized lying. But there was an even more disturbing tactic that very few people know about. The strike that punished those who tried to save lives. Reports from Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch documented the systematic use of double-tap strikes, firing a first missile and then, minutes later, a second at the exact same location, hitting the first responders rushing in to rescue the wounded. International legal experts classified the tactic as a possible war crime. In September 2011, Anwar al-Awlaki, an American Yemeni cleric suspected of ties to al-Qaeda, was killed by drone in Yemen. 2 weeks later, his son Abdul Rahman, 16 years old, an American citizen, was killed in another strike. The government said he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Attorney General Eric Holder admitted to Congress that drone strikes had killed 4 American citizens, 3 of them not specific targets. A president holding the Nobel Peace Prize had ordered the extrajudicial execution of American citizens without trial, without formal charges, without any judicial process. But the bombs were only half the story. The other half was playing out in glass-walled offices in Manhattan, and it was equally devastating. The untouchables of Wall Street. In 2008, the American financial system imploded. The crisis destroyed more than $30 trillion in global wealth, and millions of Americans lost their homes and jobs. Obama arrived promising accountability. But he appointed to the most important positions at the Treasury exactly the men connected to the system that had collapsed: Larry Summers and Timothy Geithner, Wall Street veterans. Not a single criminal prosecution was brought against any senior banker. The Financial Crisis Inquiry Commission sent 11 separate criminal referrals to the Department of Justice recommending prosecution of multiple executives. None were prosecuted. The banks received million-dollar settlements, fines paid as a cost of doing business, without admission of guilt, without anyone behind bars. Federal prosecutions for white-collar crimes hit their lowest level in 20 years. Nearly 900 executives were imprisoned during the savings and loan scandal of the 1980s. In 2008, just 1 was arrested. Obama had promised accountability. What he delivered was immunity. While Wall Street walked free, the president was quietly building the greatest surveillance apparatus humanity had ever seen. The state that spied on everyone. Before Snowden, the Obama administration had silently authorized Operation Olympic Games, which created Stuxnet, the first virus in history designed to cause real physical destruction. The code destroyed hundreds of Iranian nuclear centrifuges without a single shot fired. Obama had inaugurated the era of invisible warfare. In 2013, Edward Snowden revealed that the NSA was collecting phone records from hundreds of millions of Americans without a warrant, monitoring allied leaders like Merkel, and had access to the servers of Google, Apple, Facebook, and Microsoft. The big tech complicity was not accidental. Google executives attended White House meetings nearly every week, and Eric Schmidt worked directly on Obama's campaign. The government protected the big tech data monopoly while they provided the invisible infrastructure for global monitoring. Obama had harshly criticized Bush's illegal surveillance during the campaign. In power, he did not merely maintain the programs, he expanded them. Only 3 people had been prosecuted under the Espionage Act of 1917 before Obama took office. When he left the White House, 8 more citizens had been indicted for leaks, more than all previous presidents combined. The bankers who destroyed the economy were protected. The officials who exposed government crimes were destroyed. And there was still one last promise he had made to the entire world, one the entire world had believed. It was about to discover that it too was a lie. Guantanamo, fast and furious. and the broken promises. Guantanamo was supposed to close in the first year, one of the most explicit and public promises Obama made throughout the entire 2008 campaign. It was the ultimate symbol of Bush-era excess he vowed to bury. 8 years later, Obama left office with it still operating, still holding detainees without trial, some for more than 2 decades. He signed more than a dozen executive orders attempting to close the facility, and each one was blocked by Congress or court rulings. The result was a promise turned into a permanent symbol of political hypocrisy. But there was one area where Obama found almost no legislative obstacle: deportations. More than 3 million people deported over 2 terms, more than Bush, Clinton, and all 20th century presidents combined. Families torn apart. American-born children watching their parents placed on planes. Entire communities living in terror of ICE raids. The media that adored him called him the deporter-in-chief. And then there was Operation Fast and Furious, the biggest domestic security fiasco of his era. The ATF deliberately allowed more than 2,000 illegal firearms to be purchased and smuggled into Mexico to track cartel leaders. The plan was bold. The execution was catastrophic. The government lost track of the weapons. They were used by cartels to murder hundreds of Mexican citizens. In December 2010, one of them killed Brian Terry, an American border agent. When Congress investigated, the White House invoked executive privilege to block documents and shield Attorney General Eric Holder, who became the first in American history to be held in contempt of Congress. The government that promised transparency had armed the continent's most dangerous criminals and then tried to hide the evidence. Drones, Wall Street, mass surveillance, deportations, weapons for cartels. Every chapter told the same story with different characters. And when it all came to an end, the world did not demand answers. The world did something far more revealing. It gave him $60 million and a Netflix deal. The legacy. Nobody wants to discuss. Obama left office in 2017 with approval ratings above 50%. Bestsellers, Netflix deals, more than $60 million in publishing advances. The world saw him as an exemplary statesman. But the documented facts tell a different story. A man who personally approved extrajudicial kill lists and institutionalized deliberate strikes against first responders, who protected the architects of the greatest financial fraud in modern history, who launched cyber warfare as an instrument of state by unleashing Stuxnet on the world, who built the largest mass surveillance system in human history in silent partnership with big tech, who deported more immigrants than any predecessor, who prosecuted more whistleblowers than all previous presidents combined, who armed Mexican cartels and tried to cover it up, and who received the Nobel Peace Prize while expanding wars across 6 countries simultaneously. The story of Barack Obama is not the story of a villain. It is something more disturbing. The story of how power corrupts even the best intentions, of how a system can absorb even the most charismatic agent of change and transform him into its most efficient guardian. And it is a reminder that the greatest danger to democracy is not the tyrant everyone recognizes immediately. It is the eloquent, charismatic, smiling leader who does the same things with better vocabulary, more beautiful speeches, and the enthusiastic approval of the world's cameras. Now you know what happens behind the most admired president of the modern era. If you enjoyed this story, wait until you see what comes next. It is already on your screen. Click and watch. See you there.